Welcome to day 2 of Youth Force Daily. I'm Lauren. Each day of AIDS 2020 virtual, we bring you highlights to help you find the resources online and on demand and tell you about some of the amazing things happening at the conference. We also have some insightful interviews today. First, let's kick it off with a look at the plenaries, which are truly international, featuring speakers from the US, South Africa, Malaysia, and Spain. AMFAR's Greg Millett will discuss HIV-related inequities in the US by race and ethnicity, geography, and populations. South Africa's Tumbi Ndungu will discuss the logistical and scientific challenges in HIV vaccine and cure research. Associate Professor Rina Rajasurya of Malaysia will discuss the unique needs confronting long-term HIV survivors. And finally, Jose Arribas of Spain will discuss ART, or antiretroviral therapy, in 2020 and the decade ahead. These plenaries cover a diverse ground and are sure to be filled with cutting-edge science and thought. Joining me now is my colleague with recaps from the Global Village.
Hey, Lauren. I'm here to share the Global Village highlights of the day. On today's docket, we have #SaveSexy, a gamified approach to HIV awareness and testing. Started to help reach the UNAIDS goal of getting 90% of people living with HIV to know their status. Creators sought to erase testing-related stigma by literally making it into a game. Art has always been an important part of the HIV activist movement, and here at AIDS 2020 Virtual, it's no different. The networking zone features music, discussions, and advocacy as young people interact with researchers to ask those big HIV cure questions. Plus, there's a session about antiretroviral therapy delivery and what the 2018 International AIDS Society Youth Champions were able to achieve. What a way to kick off AIDS 2020 Virtual. Check back every day for tips on what you can't miss. Back to you, Lauren.
The theme of the year of the International AIDS Conference is resilience. What does resilience mean? Here are 2 videos created by youth activists in Africa showing us what resilience means to young people there.
My name is Akinyi, Lupah. Nina umri wa 20 years. I'm a young adolescent living with HIV, and I'm a disabled girl. I live at Kisumu, Kenya. I take care at Jaramogi Oginga Teaching Referral Hospital. Sikuwa na meza dawa, nilikuwa natupa kwa vyoo, kwa choo. Natupa kwa choo, nikitoka tu hivi hospitali naenda natupa kwa choo zote, nakaa hivi because pia nilikuwa na stigma, nilikuwa na uoga. But vile nilikuja kuwa na high viral load, nikakuja kulearn kuwa maisha ni kitu muhimu kwa binadamu. Nilikuja kuwekwa chini, nikaanza kufundishwa, kaambiwa meza dawa ni kitu muhimu. Kaona hata watu wengine wanalala kwa benches. Kasema mimi afadhali mbona nicheze na maisha. At that time nilipata kama sina la kula. During those days nilikuwa natupa dawa, nilipata kama sina chakula lolote. Na mimi kumeza dawa bila kula ni ngumu, ama hata kunywa uji ni ngumu. Kumeza dawa with an empty stomach is so hard to me. Maana nilikuwa natupa dawa. But nowadays I'm strong. Hata kama nikumeza dawa na maji hivyo, nitakaa. So lazima nile. Because najua maisha ni kitu muhimu kwangu. I'm strong because at the same time I'm a disabled girl na nachukua dawa yangu kwa masaa. Sipitishi. Many people say, kuna wengine wanasema hata ukipitisha dakika moja ni the same na hiyo saa yako, but mimi hiyo saa yenye nimeweka. HIV is not a killer. If you take your medicine at the correct time, life goes on.
I am part of the generation that will put an end to stigma and discrimination against HIV. I believe it starts with me.
I am resilient to stigma and discrimination which happened to me when I was born HIV positive at a country whereby HIV and AIDS was a disaster and so many people were dying. I was discriminated by friends, relatives, and other people. I also suffered stigma and discrimination when I was in a primary school and in secondary school, but today I am a champion.
Hello, I'm Faith. I'm resilient because I don't want to give up. It helped me to forge ahead, no matter the situation that comes my way.
Yeah, I've faced a lot of stigma and discrimination from the day I was diagnosed with HIV. Today, I'm resilient because I want to stand and fight against stigma and discrimination, which affects young people living with HIV psychologically, emotionally, as well as it also affects their adherence every day, which leads to a number of young people who are dying.
It's official. I am the newest 27-year-old in town. Okay, my name is Doreen Moraa. Today I am 27 years old. It's official. I am the newest 27-year-old in town. You may be asking yourself why I am so happy. Well, I am happy because 27 years ago, a day like today, I was born to a HIV discordant couple, and I got HIV from my mom. When I say a discordant couple, I mean my mom is HIV positive and my dad is HIV negative. So I got HIV from mother to child infection. I am the third born in a family of 5 children. 4 of us are alive. One of them went to be with the Lord, but my other siblings are all HIV negative. I'm the only one who is positively living with HIV, and I came out publicly as a person living with HIV in May 2015, and today I officially launched my YouTube channel to welcome you to walk this journey with me, to tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly side of living positively with HIV, and also to encourage someone to put that hope into someone that living with HIV is not exactly a death sentence. I have been taking my ARVs, yeah, they look like this, for the past 14 years, and I was told when I was 13 that I am living with HIV. When I was first told about my HIV status, I was not exactly sad as most people would react. I was kind of happy because one day every month I will miss going to school. I don't like waking up. And then my mom would take me out, treat me with the chicken, chips, soda. So those things kind of made me happy. And to me, when I was told during your HIV negative, positive, and you're going to take your medication, you're going to take ARVs for the rest of your life, the first thing that came into my mind was me starting a new journey. My journey as a person living with HIV for 27 years has been an amazing journey, and I would like to share it with you. So stick to this channel, like, share, subscribe, because we are going to walk through this journey for my whole 27 years, and we are going to demystify the myths, the misconception, the stigma related to HIV. Thank you so much.
Those videos are really inspiring. I'm now joined by Dany from Teenergizer, a youth-led group from Eastern Europe and Central Asia focused on HIV and sexual and reproductive health. Thanks for joining us today. Can you give a little introduction to yourself and Teenergizer?
Yes, hello, thank you for an invitation. My name is Dany, I'm 22 years old, and I do social activism since I was 17 years old. I am an activist of Eurasian Union of Adolescent and Youth Teenergizer. And yeah, we fight AIDS here in ICAP, fight hardly, yeah, and advocating also hardly for sexual and reproductive health and rights.
So can you talk a bit, Dany, about the activities or work that Teenergizer does? Some examples?
Sure. A little bit of prehistory. So in 2014, in Ukraine and other countries of ICA, unfortunately, the Global Fund stopped financing the interventions focused on youth and adolescents living with HIV and also preventive interventions. So basically, governments of those countries were not quite prepared and ready to take the responsibility and management for such programs on themselves. So historically we appeared because someone needed to start talking about HIV and adolescents and teenagers. Yeah, so unfortunately in 4 years of our work, we are the only union which works with key population groups and HIV positive adolescents. We make a Teenergizer model. We implement it in 4 countries now. It's Ukraine, Russian Federation, Kyrgyzstan, and Kazakhstan. Basically, Teenergizer model is a methodology on how to work with such an adolescents. And also we do advocacy for the national advocacy in Ukraine for implementing the sexual reproductive health and rights policies, school curriculums, and so on. And also we're working in the medical reform here to make medical services acceptable and quality for young people.
That's amazing. Can you tell us about any challenges that you've experienced as a youth-led organization?
It's deep structural ageism. Because when you work with people who make decisions and you are a young person, you're not quite accepted all the time as a professional. And quite oftenly, people in governments and people who make decisions, international donors, they can't really hear you as a real representative of your community. So you need to advocate hardly, as I said. You need to prove and show all the time that the propositions you make needs to be heard firstly and accepted. So just an example, in Ukraine, when we started advocating for the bill on determination of adolescents and rights to young people for medical services since 16 years old, including SRHR services, the lawmakers, the deputies, members of parliament were quite unprofessional in work with us, actually, because they were not ready to accept progressive reforms. And so this story takes maybe a last half of year, and still we go to every meeting to prove them that our bill basically is a necessary thing, which is recommended by WHO, and you need to accept it. But that's the second challenge, that here people who make decisions are quite conservative, and you really need to fight hardly with them.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's quite a number of challenges. Is there anything that would support Teenergizer to sort of overcome these challenges?
Well, I guess since AIDS 2018, which was held in Amsterdam, we showed to a number of people who make decisions in terms of investments and policies. I mean, United Nations agencies and international big donors, that such structures and such initiatives as Teenergizer in ICA countries are really working and helping a number of people, young people, and it really should be supported. So a big number of donors are since that year investing in lots of different programs here and supporting Teenergizer model.
So many of our viewers may be interested in getting involved. So how can other young people join or support Teenergizer?
The most important support, motivational support, emotional support, is when we see the results of our work. And basically now we are actively promoting and empowering our main service, our key service. Basically, it's online counseling, peer-to-peer online counseling, which is absolutely free and confidential, with super prepared and smart peer counselors and professional psychologists. So what inspires us when we see that our counseling is working and helping young people. So actually, and it's just an important service, because mental health is the next big challenge for worldwide communities, for the leaders and healthcare systems. So mental health should be supported, and especially among adolescents. So for us, very important help would be help in promoting the knowledge, promoting basically the online counseling.
Dany, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so inspired by the work that Teenergizer is doing and other youth-led groups around the world.
Okay, thank you very much for invitation. It's great to see you.
My next guest is Dr. Elaine Abrams, a professor of epidemiology and pediatrics at Columbia University, where she also serves as senior director of research at ICAP. Dr. Abrams, thank you for joining us. You're also the co-chair of the World Health Organization Pediatric Antiretroviral Working Group, so you are very busy. Can you talk about your introduction into the field of HIV?
Sure. Thanks so much, Lauren, for the introduction and for inviting me to speak today. I began in HIV actually close to 35 years ago as a medical student. I was rotating on pediatrics at Harlem Hospital in New York City, and one of the first children diagnosed with HIV infection was on the hospital ward with an unknown pneumonia, and went on to have a lung biopsy and was determined ultimately to have HIV infection. And a year later, I returned to Harlem to work as a pediatric resident, and was introduced to the HIV epidemic in children. And over the years, I began to spend more and more time taking care of children and families with HIV infection. And sort of as I became a pediatrician, I became immersed in the HIV epidemic in New York City.
Thanks for that. So the theme of this year's AIDS 2020 virtual conference is resilience. Dr. Abrams, what does the term resilience mean to you?
It boils down to having the inner strength and talent and abilities to manage multiple threats and challenges over the life course. And thinking about it as a pediatrician in particular, work with many young people who, despite the odds of poverty, odds of living in communities filled with crime, odds of living with a complicated and at one time considered to be a fatal infection, being able to manage all of those things and come through childhood and adolescence into adulthood. And, being able to take the punches and learn and grow and continue to move forward.
So as a pediatrician and a researcher, can you talk about a time where you yourself had to exhibit resilience in your work?
Well, I think there were many times, but particularly at the beginning of the epidemic in the US, and then about 15 years ago when I first started working in Africa. It was really quite challenging, particularly from the pediatric point of view, because we didn't have any effective treatments for children. And we were really in a battle against an infection that was quite powerful and was preventing children from growing and from developing normally. And we just had to persist trying to test different approaches to keeping children and families and adults healthy, doing research for clinical trials for new drugs, thinking about how we engage with communities and help disenfranchised communities engage with healthcare and take medicines once they became available. So it required quite a bit of resilience as a researcher, as a pediatrician, as a young woman, and central Harlem, to just keep going and believe that there was more in the future for these kids.
Can you talk a bit about your work with young people and engaging youth in research?
We had the good fortune to develop some photography workshops where we invited youth living with HIV to attend a series of workshops to learn how to use photography to both sort of express and tell us about their lives and their lives living with HIV, as well as providing opportunities for professional growth and possible economic opportunities. And through these workshops, we were able to first meet some incredible young people who taught us a lot about living with HIV, but also create fantastic photography and videos. And these young people through this work have become advocates for the communities they live in. And that's one of the most exciting things that we've been involved with. And I think that some of the photographs and some of the work that's come out of those workshops will be on display or shown at the meeting.
So in thinking about the future, and if you could maybe expand upon this a bit more, how do you view young people's role in HIV-related research and I guess broadly in the HIV response?
Well, I think the ideal is that it happens hand in hand, that research is not undertaken without the collaboration and the input and the I'll call it a youth voice, but it's youth represented in different ways and on different levels. And I think that extends well beyond research. I think it's critical around implementation, around everything that we're doing in response to this epidemic, to achieve an end to AIDS, testing and treatment, and thinking about service delivery and prevention, probably most importantly.
Dr. Abrams, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for doing this, and just a true thanks to all of the young people who have input on my work and who continue to do such important work globally. Thank you, Aron.
We leave you with a segment we'll feature every day this week, where we meet youth leaders from around the world to share their insights on the future of the HIV response. Today, we're speaking with 20-year-old Vladimir Grichishkin from Russia. He's an openly gay HIV-positive activist, a medical student, and a local officer of SCORA, the Standing Committee on Sexual and Reproductive Health. Vladimir, can you talk a bit about the HIV response in Russia?
First of all, for me, it's really apparent that the effective HIV response consists interaction between government, NGOs, and medical and scientific research companies. NGOs and international humanitarian organizations provides just tremendous work to cope with the epidemic, but the role of government in Russia is questionable because on the one side, it provides HIV-positive people with free antiretroviral drugs. But on the other side, the main statements that are considered to be the most important for coping the pandemic is about strengthening of traditional moral and family values and judgment of unsafe practices. I think that for everyone in the world, for every health specialist and NGO worker outside of Russia, it's obvious that judgment and traditional values is not about coping with HIV. Literally, it means that you have to be cisgender, straight person with only wife to avoid contact with HIV infection. And it just absolutely silly, and government does not really realize that.
Okay, so you mentioned some of the prevention tools that are available in Russia. Can you talk more about PEP or PrEP? Are those available in country as well?
Well, PrEP and PEP are available in Moscow. This is the only region where you can buy PrEP in pharmacies. In another parts of Russia, many of gay people, for example, doesn't really know that PrEP exists, and about 30% of gay people know about what does undetectable equal untransmittable means. So this is complicated, and it's need to be more informed.
Vladimir, thank you for advocating for positive change.
Thank you so much, Thim.
Thank you for watching. Be sure to join us tomorrow and keep the conversation going online at the Youth Cafe.